Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Welcome and bienvenue to today's Humanist Canada webinar on Humanist Chaplaincy, which is both a webinar and a celebration. My name is Ian McMillan. I'm a Humanist Canada volunteer, and I'll be moderating today's conversation, covering for the wonderful Anna Popovich. I'm thrilled to be moderating today, especially because we have a really exciting speaker, Captain Marie-Claire Khadij, and I'm going to introduce her and let her get started in just a second, but first, a little bit of housekeeping. We'll be together for 60 minutes today, and we imagine that you may have a few questions, so please ask them whenever they come up for you. I don't want to be the one asking all the questions. And you have two options for submitting those questions. You can type them out using the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen, and we can read the questions out, or you can ask questions directly by using the raise hand function under reactions, and we'll call on you to unmute yourself and ask them. Même si la majeure partie de la présentation d'aujourd'hui est en anglais, Marie-Claire aimerait répondre aux questions en français aussi. Alors, n'hésitez pas à poser vos questions en français dans le Q&A ou lever la main en Zoom et vous pourrez les poser. I'll also mention before we begin that Humanist Canada has launched its Chaplaincy program. You can find more information about it on our website under programs at humanistcanada.ca. And we're also building an archive of video recordings about Humanist Chaplaincy, which you can find on our website under webinars. I am very pleased to welcome Captain Marie-Claire Khadij, a Canadian Armed Forces Chaplain since 2017, and the first Humanist military chaplain in the Americas since her appointment earlier this year in May 2022. Today, for this interactive webinar, she is here with us to celebrate, share her journey, and answer your questions. Welcome, MC. Merci d'être ici aujourd'hui. How are you doing today?
Merci, Ian. I'm doing well, and like you said, today's a celebration. I realized recently things have happened so fast that we didn't have time to celebrate this yet with Humanist Canada, and it's such a big accomplishment for our organization, all of us, the humanists, agnostic, and atheists. So I'm really glad we're here today to celebrate together.
That's awesome. I'm excited too, and I think everyone else here is as well. So maybe let's get started. Maybe you can walk us through your story, tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to become a Humanist chaplain.
Oui, bien sûr. So I've been a chaplain for 5 years in the Canadian Armed Forces. Initially, I joined as a Catholic chaplain. Back then, the options were, either as a Christian, Jewish, or Muslim chaplain. And I had initially studied in Catholicism, so I was able to join as a Catholic chaplain. But during the years went by, I felt like it was less and less my place. It didn't really correspond with my values. And then in 2020, I met Srishti Huku, which many in Humanist Canada know. She was actually starting her journey to become a humanist military chaplain in the CAF. And I had the privilege to, see her journey and see her open all of, create the way so that it could happen. But unfortunately, because of a technicality on the CAM Forces side, she wasn't able to join, but she had done all of this groundwork with the help as well as of Commander Nick Bruzzoni, which is also really active in Humanist Canada, and Martin Fritt, our Humanist Canada president. So that's the thing, the path was open. Someone just had to walk through the door. And at that point, that was in November of 2021, I was just ready. I just felt like, I was a humanist. That's what really corresponded to my values. So I was ready to do the switch, and I'm very glad that I did. So in November, I made my decision, and I officially left the Catholic Church. Humanist Canada trained me, and then in May of 2022 is when I officially became the first Humanist CAF chaplain.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. What is it like being the first Humanist military chaplain in the Americas?
It's quite an honor. I feel really humbled. At the same time, it's a lot of responsibility. So I do feel like I have to make sure that I can build the future for the future Humanist military chaplains to come. Thankfully, I'm surrounded by a lot of support from Humanist Canada, but also from CAF chaplain and some military chaplains as well. One of them is Lieutenant Colonel Noel. A lot of you don't know him, but he's done incredible work to open the way for us to be able to have Humanist Chaplain in the CAF. So I'm really grateful. Puis juste un petit mot pour nos francophones, je dis juste que c'est vraiment un privilège d'être la première aumônier humaniste, mais j'espère que je ne serai pas la seule pour longtemps. Mais je sais qu'on a des bons candidats qui s'en viennent. So I know we have good candidates on the way. So hopefully in a few years, I won't be the only one anymore.
Awesome. And so what would you say is the difference between maybe other military chaplains and a humanist military chaplain like yourself?
Yeah, so that's a very good question because not everyone understands necessarily what Canadian chaplains do in the CAF. By the way, CAF is Canadian Armed Forces. I apologize if I speak some military lingo here. I'll try to translate my acronyms. But yeah, so really all chaplains, no matter their faith tradition, or in my case, my tradition as my worldview, we should be serving military members the way that they want to be served, right? The way they want to journey. So really, when we interact with military members, our tradition is what inspires us, it's what grounds us, but the service we're giving should be adapted to the person in front of us. So it's not about us, it's about them. So in general, my role is very similar to all of the other chaplains' role. It's to journey with the members of where they themselves wish to journey, of what they wish to talk about. The moment that it becomes a little bit more specific is that sometimes we face, as military members, some life challenges where we wish to discuss with someone who has the same worldview or the same faith. For example, you could have a Jewish member who, would like to speak to a rabbi about a particular aspect of his life. And in those situations, we refer them to a chaplain of that tradition. So in my case, I've been having referrals from some members who are exploring parts of their life that really linked to their values as atheists, agnostics, or humanists, and that they wish to explore with the humanist chaplains. So in those situations, they get referred to me. And that's when I act specifically as a humanist chaplain. And then also if ever agnostics or atheists or humanists want to receive different ceremonies that are, in the humanist tradition, well, then I can provide that. So I can provide non-theistic, for example, naming ceremonies or weddings, etc.
That's awesome. And maybe we can go a little bit deeper into that. Can we talk a little bit more about your work as a chaplain and what it looks like within the Canadian Armed Forces?
Oui, alors mon travail comme un aumônier, c'est vraiment d'être sur le terrain avec les gens au jour le jour. So my work as a chaplain is really to be on the ground with the members in the day-to-day. So what my day would look like right now, I'm with tech services in Gagetown. So we have a supply company, we have a transport company, we have a maintenance company. So I have a little office and transport company, which I love. So my day looks like I go there, I say hi to the members, I might answer some emails, and then very quickly my phone will start ringing. And it's members who would like to speak to me, or their chain of command, their supervisor who would like me to speak with them. Maybe they're going through some challenges with their family or with their work, or maybe they're just having a bad day and need to vent. So then I make time to meet with them and discuss. We also, as chaplains, have, we know all the resources. So we know where we can send people to get support. And apart from that, we also are part of advisory committees on the base for different causes. We also sit in like the O groups, which are the weekly meetings when the higher up in the chain of command meet to kind of coordinate the work in the unit. And what I love about my job is we get to work with all the ranks because, the military is quite structured. Like there's a very rank structure, but us as chaplains, we get to speak to anyone, we get to go visit anyone, and we advise the commandants on the unit on the morale of the unit. And usually chaplains are very well respected because the commandants know that in the day-to-day, we're there, we're the people, we'll go, we'll do the exercises, we'll be there. So the perspective we bring is very valuable. So that's what we do in the day-to-day. You never know what your day is going to look like, honestly. Some days I just end up on a big military truck going somewhere in the field without having planned it. Some days I end up serving a meal. And other days I just have someone crying in my office and I take care of them. So it really depends, but it's a really great job.
That's awesome. You speak about it with such joy. It's so nice to see. I'll just remind everyone to please put any questions in the Q&A or to raise their hand if they have any questions for MC as we're going along. Maybe on that note, MC, we can do a little bit about your thoughts around why you think it's important to have access to non-religious care like this in institutions like the Canadian Armed Forces or even other institutions, and what your thoughts might be around that.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, right, is there can be resistance in the idea of humanist chaplaincy, because people will say, well, historically, a chaplain is religious. And does a chaplain even work with the word humanism? Because chaplain, the word is kind of linked to specifically their Christian faith. So why do we need to be there? They're social workers. Can't those members just go see the social workers, right? If they're non-religious and don't want to speak to a chaplain. So these are all valid points. But to me, the thing is, as chaplains, like I described, right, we're there with the people in the day-to-day. So really, we bring something that is different. But as well, the reason I think that we need humanist chaplaincy specifically is because in the CAM forces, there was a review that was done of the chaplaincy, I believe last year, and it showed 40% of members don't associate with a religion. 40%. That's a huge amount. And if you look at the Statistics Canada stats that came out recently about the entire Canadian population, it's kind of in line with that. But what I say is those members still have a need for chaplain services because they also have questions. What are my life values? Why am I here? What are my life goals? And all of that can be explored specifically through a humanist chaplain if that's what they wish. So that's why for me, it's so important that we have a good diversity within the chaplaincy to serve all of our members, because we also have members who need specific religious services. And sometimes people forget that, but especially in terms of combat, you have members who, for them, a big part of their resilience is getting attached to their faith, and for whom having religious chaplains is very important. You have others that is the complete opposite. You actually have people who lose their faith in those situations. So having a humanist chaplain there to support them through that is important. So that's why I strongly believe that as humanist chaplains, we're so valuable, and we don't take anything away from a chaplaincy. We just make it stronger. And that's what I hope that the countries who have chaplaincy but are not open yet to the idea of a humanist chaplain would come to realize. This benefits all of us. It just means that everyone can get the services they need the way that they need it.
Amazing. That's so cool. We have some questions starting to come into the Q&A, so let's do those.
Hey.
We've got Anonymous asking, what advice would you give to someone considering humanist chaplaincy?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say the first thing to do, so it's specifically humanist chaplaincy, not necessarily military chaplaincy. It's humanist chaplaincy. I would say the first thing to do is get in touch with humanist chaplains. So I'm the first military humanist chaplain, but we also have other humanist chaplains that are featured on our website. So maybe Anna, who's doing our tech in the background, can put the link with all of our humanist chaplain information. So I would say your first step is to really contact them and ask them specifically about their work. Like, what does it look like in the day-to-day? What do they do? Why do they love their job? And I think that would be the best starting point for you. And also they'd be able to orient you depending if you need more studies. So I'll answer this one in French too. Fait que pour nos amis francophones, la question c'est si on est intéressé à devenir aumônier humaniste, pas nécessairement militaire, juste aumônier humaniste. Bien, mon conseil, c'est contacter un de nos aumôniers qu'on a déjà, puis on va partager le lien dans les commentaires pour que vous voyez c'est qui qu'on a en ce moment-ci.
Merci bien. Okay, Camille is asking, what are some of your biggest challenges that you face as a humanist chaplain?
Oh, that's a good one. Thank you, Camille. It's not easy being the first at anything, of course. And in this context, it's not easy because it's so new. And not everyone is, like I said, is necessarily open to the idea of humanist chaplaincy. So that's a challenge. What's interesting is I get a lot of support, especially within the chaplaincy, from the Muslim and Jewish members specifically. And I think that's because they know what it's like when you're, the first or the few first of when you're a minority. So it's not easy. But more and more I'm getting support from all of the chaplains as they get used to the concept, right? Because there's an education and conversation piece as well to be had. And I think we're all in this together, and it's important to acknowledge that this is new and it takes a little bit of time to get used to, and that's okay. So that's the challenge, is us to slowly integrate ourselves into a system that originally the chaplaincy system was made specifically for Christians, right? And more the structure is expanding. So there are some growing pains, and not just for me, but we also have Buddhist chaplains who are in the process. They're not qualified yet, but they're in the process of coming a Unitarian Universalist chaplain. So all of us face a little bit of those challenges, but I think slowly but surely we're gonna make it work. But to me, when it becomes challenging, I just remind myself why I'm there for, and it's to serve the members. And I've gotten so many, like when it was announced that I became the first CAF Humanist chaplain, I received hundreds of emails from members across Canada, all kinds of ranks, just congratulating me and telling me how happy they were that I was there. I even had someone that was amazing. I was just walking on the base, and I heard someone, it's you. And I just heard someone running towards me. And I'm like, oh, like, they just told me I'm an atheist, and I saw your video when you're my chaplain. And they were just so happy. And that just warmed my heart. I had another occasion where one of my colleague chaplain did a presentation, and he spoke about me being the first Humanist chaplain. And the students, because it was during a training, came to my office after. So I just look up, and I have like 5 faces of students in my doorway. And I'm like, oh, like, we just wanted to see you. We wanted to know who you were. And we're all atheists. And like, we're just so happy you're here. Yeah, that really warmed my heart. Alors, c'est ça. Donc, il y a des défis, mais il y a aussi beaucoup de joie que ça vient avec. Puis c'est normal, avec toute chose qui est nouveau, c'est pas facile au début, mais c'est comme ça pour tout ce qui est nouveau. Puis lentement, on va faire notre place.
Thank you so much. We have a hand up in the chat, so we'll ask Steve to ask a live question. Go ahead, Steve. Unmute yourself, Steve, and go ahead.
Hey, ma'am, how are you doing?
Hi, Steve. Good to see you.
Yeah, nice to hear your voice. We've been talking for quite a while on Facebook. Once I noticed that when they made the announcement that you were the first humanist chaplain in the military, something I've been hoping for so long, I'd reach out to you immediately and talk to you about that. So it's nice to hear your voice finally for the first time. I've got a question and then just also a resource. So my question is, being a part of the military myself, I know that there are entry standards, and it used to be the entry standards were you had to have a Master's of Divinity to be in the chaplaincy program. And I'm just wondering what the entry standards are now. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun. Maybe you were going to mention this later, but I just wanted to kind of ask that now. And then I'll also share my resource before I mute myself so that you can continue on with your presentation. This is awesome. But I also am the Ambassador Program Director for Recovering from Religion. So that is also a really good resource to mention to people if there are people coming to your office and needing a resource for peer support and anyone to talk to, recoveringfromreligion.org. 184 I doubt it is the phone number for that. So thank you so much for being here today, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. Steve was one of the first military member to reach out to me and express his joy. So I really appreciate that he's here today. And yes, what you mentioned is a great resource. And I know you've been dedicating a lot of time to that organization. So thank you for what you do. That's so important because unfortunately, there are some of our members who have been hurt by religion, and we want them to be able to heal and have a place where they can feel safe to do that. And to answer the question about, that's a big question about the standards for recruiting. And you're right, it used to be Masters of Divinity. It changed, it had to kind of be extended a little bit for humanism. So now a master's degree is needed, but there's flexibility. In French, you have a better word for it, flexibility. It's more, we're looking for relation d'aide. So anything that has to do with supporting directly people. So it can be in social work, for example. That's a good example of psychology. But we kind of don't have in the CAF set standards yet, but there's flexibility. So with our candidates that are coming in right now, they all come from different backgrounds, and but it looks like it's going to be working out. So slowly we're kind of expanding what the criteria can be. And then of course, all of those candidates also get trained by Humanist Canada in humanism. But yeah, so that's the great news. And also something that a lot of people don't know is if you have a bachelor in anything, you can be eligible to apply to do your master's through the Canadian Armed Forces. And then you're actually, I mean, you have to be selected, of course, but then they actually pay you become a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, they pay your salary and they pay your studies to do a master. So that's a great way if someone wants to join as a humanist chaplain, has a bachelor in something that, isn't necessarily related, but is interested. That's an avenue. So I won't give all the details right now because obviously it's very complex, but if anyone is interested in that, please send them my way because it's a great program. Even myself, I did part of that program because I needed an extra year of theology when I first joined. So I used that program. And also another criteria is members who come in need 2 years of experience. It used to be experience working in a church. Clearly, that doesn't apply to us. And for the Muslims and the Jewish, it was modified, of course, for those chaplains. But for us, it has to be in, again, relation d'aide, right? So in a context, for example, hospital chaplaincy or prison chaplaincy. But again, the CLM program can pay your salary while you do those 2 years. So it's a win-win for us recruiting humanist chaplains, and it's a win-win for you because you gain more experience in great context and you get your studies paid. So that's my recruitment pitch, by the way.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve, for the question. We have another question from Martin. Go ahead, Martin.
Hi, MC. It's lovely to hear your presentation today. And one of the things that I'd wanted you to comment on, I was so impressed with this year's Memorial Remembrance Day service in Ottawa. And for the first time, having a truly inclusive, what would have been a prayer in the past, this year was a moment of reflection, which was incredibly heartening. And I was wondering if you had any personal reflections on this and whether or not this kind of moment of reflection would have an impact on other kinds of rituals that might be offered in the armed forces. I could imagine, in the Navy, when there's a naming of ships, or in other cases when troops are deployed. So how might this kind of inclusive reflection be incorporated in other areas? Thanks for answering.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, that was quite a historical day, this Remembrance Day. And for those who haven't seen it, go see it on the Humanist Canada Facebook page. But so yeah, the Chaplain General offered a reflection where usually it would have been a prayer during the Remembrance Day service in Ottawa. And there was no order usually there's an order to remove headdress. There was no order to do that. And this is all thanks to, honestly, it was started by Commander Nick Bruzone, who's also a member of Humanist Canada, who whole years ago, started a fight to say that we couldn't do that. We couldn't, because military members have to go to the event, to those type of events. And if a prayer is offered, we're pretty much imposing religion or prayer on military members. And some of them might just not want to remove their headdress and participate in a prayer. So a few years ago, it was introduced, which was a good in-between solution, that each chaplain before saying a prayer would say, we invite you to join us in prayer or to use this time as a personal reflection. So that's when the Royal Canadian Chaplaincy kind of started to adapt, which was a first good step. But now the next step is that slowly but surely we're moving towards offering reflections in those moments, chaplain, instead of prayers. And they had already a lot of work been done in the past to make sure the prayers were the most inclusive possible for religious members. But unfortunately, that didn't include agnostic, atheist, or humanist, right? Because we don't pray. So this is huge, and I really want to give the credit to Commander Nick Bruzone because he's the one who got the ball rolling on that. And yeah, we're working closely, him and I, right now, with the chaplain services to come up with upcoming policies that hopefully are going to give more guidance, because these types of prayers are offered, yes, at multiple events usually. And I do believe, for me, like, that it's very powerful to have a chaplain offer those reflection at those special military moments, because like, we know the people, we're on the ground with them, and often we know what to share in the moment, what they've been through, what to reflect on, what to give thanks for. So I think that's really powerful to keep those moments, but not as a prayer, obviously, as a reflection. So thank you for that question, Martin. Pour nos amis francophones, je disais juste que pour la première fois cette année, c'est une réflexion qui a été offerte à Ottawa pendant le Jour du souvenir, pas une prière. Puis c'est dans des efforts d'être de plus en plus inclusifs pour les humanistes, les athées et les agnostiques. Donc c'est vraiment une grande nouvelle.
Excellent. Okay, we'll go back to the Q&A. We have lots of questions coming in, and keep them coming, everyone. This is really great.
Nice.
Next up, we have Camille. What are the most rewarding parts of your position?
The most rewarding parts? Oh, well, I get right now, it's really fun because I get to connect with other humanist chaplaincy, because there are other ones in the world. For those who don't know, it's the Netherlands since the 1960s, actually, who have had humanist chaplains and who are a big military humanist chaplains. And they're a big part of, they represent a big part of the chaplains in the Netherlands. So connecting with them has been really amazing. We also have some in Belgium, military humanist chaplains in Belgium, which I've been in contact with. We're actually going to have the pleasure to have the visit of the chief of chaplain of humanists from Belgium in December. I get to go see him in Ottawa, so I'm very excited about that. Also, really recently in Norway, they had the first military humanist chaplain. Yes, so it's good. Like and it's amazing to kind of create those connections. So that's something in my job that I really, really love. And I really love when, because sometimes you have military members who have been hurt by religion, right? So they'll see me and they'll be like, "Oh, who are you?" You know, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm the chaplain." And they'll be like, "Oh, I'm not religious. I'm not interested." And I'll just say, "Oh, good, me neither." And they're just in shock because they haven't heard of me. So like, what? So they're so confused, and then it starts amazing conversations. So that's why that makes me really happy to see that, you know, those members who wouldn't have spoken to a chaplain before, just because sometimes it's previous just traumatic experiences just in their life in general, well, now they can come speak to a chaplain. So that's really neat. It makes for good conversations.
That's awesome. We have another question in the chat from Carolina. I think we maybe have touched on this a little bit, MC, but we'll see if you have anything more to add to it. It says, what kind of study program can we follow to become a humanist chaplain? I'm a member of the CAF, Officer in Human Resources, and I have a bachelor degree in administration.
Hi, nice to meet you. So obviously, I'm just not going to go into too many details here. Give me a call after, but I'll put my contact info afterwards in the chat. But so, for example, if you already, because she already has a bachelor, is what you said, right? Yes. Okay. So what you would do is you would contact us, you would start the process to see if you can become a humanist chaplain, and then you would have to go through the CELIM program, and then we would look at what types of programs you could go and study. So it could be social work. I know we have some who are going in religious studies as well as humanist chaplains that are interested to do that. And because right now it's the first cohort that we have of humanist chaplains coming in this way, there's 7 of them. So we don't know yet exactly what type of programs are going to be approved by the Canadian Armed Forces and also by Humanist Canada. So there's a whole conversation going on right now. So I can't say specifically, but I can say kind of that's what we're looking at right now. Social work, I think some want to do psychology, and religious studies are kind of the main ones. But again, this is something we're developing. And by the way, I do want to mention that I'm so grateful to our candidates, and a lot of them are here today, that they're opening the way, because I came from already being a chaplain. But those 7 candidates, they're starting as, really following the path that all of the others are probably going to follow as well. And it's not easy because we're figuring it out as we go. So I'm really thankful to all of them because they've been really flexible and understanding in their training. So, and please send them all good vibes, because we really hope that most of them, yes, we really hope that most of them are going to make it and become my colleagues, hopefully soon, because I don't want to be alone for too long. I need the more humanist chaplains in me. Donc, ce que je disais, c'est s'il y en a ici qui sont intéressés à joindre, la meilleure façon honnêtement, c'est de m'appeler, parce qu'il y a beaucoup de différentes choses qui sont en jeu. Donc, appelez-moi. Puis aussi, je voulais remercier tous les candidats. Je sais qu'il y en a d'entre vous qui sont ici aujourd'hui. Merci beaucoup pour d'être prêts à faire ce cheminement-là. Je sais que ce n'est pas facile. Alors, on vous apprécie.
Excellent. So exciting. Okay. I have a question from Marty. It's a little bit of a long one, so I'm going to read it slowly.
Okay.
Is Marie-Claire, the clergy project in the US that helps clergy who leave their church for other careers, say that their experience indicates that up to 30% of those in church leadership are skeptical and actually are more non-theistic in their beliefs, but are trapped. What is your experience in CAF for chaplains like you who might be interested in humanism and joining our chaplaincy?
That's a good one. Well, here's the thing, right? Is that me, because in my tradition, I wasn't ordained because Catholic women can't be ordained. So I was what we call a pastoral associate. So outside of the military, I had no status in the church. So that made it a bit easier in a way for me to transition, because I wasn't, I was just like a member of the church. But obviously it can be really hard for, if you have, in any tradition, people that have been ordained and have been dedicating their lives for so many years to different, religious traditions, that even if, and I'm talking in general here, not just with the CAF, but just in general, if anyone wishes to leave, like, it's quite hard when you have all of those roots with that tradition. What I can say is that I know Humanist Canada, we're going to be supportive if ever any chaplains, wishes to transition, and we're going to be our best to assist them in the CAF. But then again, we don't actively encourage anyone, obviously, to change their tradition, right? We hope that everyone is happy in where they're at, because I think that's really important. But yeah, I mean, statistically, there's probably some like anywhere in any tradition that are struggling, and all I can say to them is, follow your truth. That's what I did, and it wasn't easy, but I have zero regrets. Like, it's been amazing, and it was difficult and hard, but I'm much happier now as a humanist chaplain. So that's what I would say about that.
That's awesome. Okay, another question from Devin. I think this is related to Martin's earlier question. So Claire, you can clarify for me, MC, if we've already answered this. It says the Chaplain General's message for Remembrance Day was much more inclusive this year than it has been in previous years. Can you tell us a bit about how that happened?
Yeah, so it was, and again, it's thanks to the work of Commander Nick Bruzzone, and then the work of a working group. But we're working on a potential policy that will make it that it's always a reflection. But I don't know what the Chaplain General's intent was, that he chose to do it this way. I believe it's because he wanted to be inclusive already before even the policy potentially came out. So I really appreciate that. To me, that's a huge sign of support for all agnostic, atheists, and humanists. And I think also that this is a good example for Canada in general, because there are places in Canada where prayer is still imposed, in different settings. And again, for me, the way that I see it is, it's not that humanists, well, I shall speak for myself. I'm not against prayer. If someone wants to pray, I will make sure they have a space to pray. I will respect them. I will get them the resources. And that's important to me, because I want to respect them, but I also want to be respected. And for me, the way to be respected is prayer should never be imposed on me. Now, there are times where I may choose to go in a building where prayer is happening to show support just as a military chaplain, right? For example, if there's a funeral of one of my members, it's a Catholic funeral, of course I will go, right? But that's the thing, is that there's a choice there. I believe prayer should never be imposed on anyone because it's a religious practice and we have a freedom in Canada to choose or not to do that. But I want to make that clear because sometimes people think, oh, humanists, like they're going to stop the prayer. We're not stopping the prayer. What we're saying is prayer shouldn't be imposed. At Remembrance Day, if afterwards some people want to gather in their communities and do a special prayer for that day, that there's no problem with that. That's beautiful. But that's with consent, right? And that's what it comes down to in the end. It's a question of consent. You know, I sometimes tell to people, like, you wouldn't be comfortable if I came up here and I don't know, I started praying to the happy human. Not that I would do that, obviously, but if I did my, you know, you wouldn't be comfortable with that. So don't impose that on me either. And I think that slowly more and more chaplains were already aware of that and already kind of doing more reflections in prayer and trying to be inclusive. It's just where we're at now as a society, I think. And honestly, I think it's beautiful. I think it's very beautiful because it shows respect for everyone.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for the question. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I should say maybe a little bit of French, mais c'est ça. Moi, les humanistes, c'est pas pour moi, personnellement, je suis pas contre la prière. Et je vais toujours supporter ceux qui veulent prier. C'est juste que je crois que c'est une question de consentement, puis la prière ne devrait pas être imposée.
Okay. All right, next question is from Karis. Have you had many opportunities to do ceremonies, such as weddings or baby welcomings, in your work?
Not yet. Please, military members company. But the reason, honestly, is it's not very well known yet. And I have to put more efforts in getting the word out to military members that this even exists, right? Because I'm meeting a lot of military members who are atheists, and they're so pleased because they felt a bit isolated as just like a lone atheist. They didn't have connection with any group. So when they find out about humanism, they're so pleased because, like, oh, this is what I've been looking for, kind of like a community. And then I tell them, oh yeah, we even have, like, you know, we celebrate first light during the solstice, the winter solstice. You know, I can do these ceremonies, and they're mind blown. Like, what? Like, I didn't know this. This is great. But the truth is, I have to put more efforts to put the word out there so it gets known. Right now, most of my efforts have been put, honestly, on recruitment. That was my first priority right now. But I'm really hoping that soon we'll get some. I know I have a wedding coming up in March, so I'm really excited about that. Yeah. And someone, you know, make a baby so I can do a baby naming ceremony. Someone in the military, come on, let's do this. I even have the ritual written up for it already.
That's awesome. We'll put that as an action item proposed.
Yes, thank you. Someone have a baby, please.
Okay, we have a hand up from Anne-Marie. Go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead, please.
Bonjour Marie-Claire. En fait, je voulais savoir, le plus grand défi, est-ce que c'était d'être une femme aumônière ou d'être un aumônier humaniste au sein des forces armées?
Wow, ça c'est une très bonne question. Alors, comme je suis rentrée comme catholique en premier, j'ai vécu d'abord l'expérience comme femme. L'expérience comme femme, c'était pas toujours facile, juste parce que l'aumônerie a tendance à être un milieu très masculin. On est juste 15% de femmes dans l'aumônerie en ce moment. Donc ça, c'est sûr, c'était un petit peu, c'était pas toujours facile. Et beaucoup, c'est de micro-agressions, mais jamais avec des mauvaises intentions. Mais c'est comme cette pression-là de toujours, je pense que beaucoup de femmes qui sont dans les minorités le savent aussi, là, cette pression de performer toujours mieux parce qu'on a l'impression qu'on a des plus grandes attentes sur nous. Fait que ça, c'était pas facile, c'est certain. Mais aussi, j'ai reçu beaucoup de support de personnes qui avaient vécu des choses similaires qui m'ont beaucoup appuyée. Par rapport à l'humanisme, c'est plus de l'incompréhension, je dirais, de la part de certaines personnes, de simplement ne pas comprendre le pourquoi que c'est nécessaire. Donc, ça aussi, c'est dur à vivre un petit peu parce que quand on travaille tellement fort sur quelque chose, c'est difficile de sentir que c'est pas tout le monde qui est à bord avec ça. Fait que c'est C'est une bonne question. Je dirais les deux ont été pas faciles. Mais vraiment, je trouve que dans les deux cas, ce qui fait la différence, c'est de se trouver des alliés. Puis il y a beaucoup de personnes qui m'ont, vraiment, j'aimerais ça pouvoir nommer tout le monde, mais il y a tellement de personnes qui m'ont appuyée pendant ma carrière. L'un d'eux étant mon mari qui a été ma roche, comme je dis, mon mari qui a été ma roche au travers de tout ça. Mais je pense que c'est ça la clé, c'est vraiment de s'entourer d'alliés. So I was just saying, I was asked, because I had the experience of being a female chaplain and then a humanist chaplain. So both, a minority, because only 15% of chaplains are female. And that comes with some challenges, of course, as you can imagine, like in any environment where you're a minority. And also as a humanist chaplain, of course, because not everybody understands, the concept of it. But for me, what's been key is I've had so many people supporting me, right? And it's making those allies that are there to really support you through it. That makes a huge difference. And often those allies are people who represent other minorities. It's just happened that way. Not always, obviously, but there's just a higher percentage of people who represent other minorities that tend to support. I think just because when you've been through it, you can really understand it.
Fantastic. So we have just under 20 minutes left. I have about 6 questions in the chat. So if anyone has any other questions, just get them in now. We'll go next to Anonymous. As a military chaplain, can you tell us about some of the themes of challenges faced by members and their families?
Yeah, sure. That's a good one. So obviously I'll speak very generally what I've seen around the CAF. So people come to see us for all kinds of reasons, but mainly difficult times at work, and they just need to vent. They need to close the door and let it all out. I call it verbal diarrhea, and it just needs to come out. And often in those situations, we just listen as chaplains. We just listen. We let them vent. I've had people scream. I have a pillow in my office specifically for that, because that way they don't scream. They can scream in the pillow. But just to let out those emotions that need to come out, or cry. Sometimes people will come and cry. And they'll say, I never cry. Well, I'm like, but that's okay. This is the safe space where you can do that, right? So that's the place where whatever emotion or frustration you're feeling, you can come in the office. It's a safe place. Nobody will know. And we help the members. We give Kleenex after, and they go out as if nothing happened. We even have often mirrors in our office, so they can check themselves before they go, and they're sure, okay, nobody knows, and they just go out. And what we do is confidential. We don't tell anyone when members come to see us, so nobody knows. So some themes are, so just frustrations at work. Military career. Military career is not easy. It's not easy. We move a lot. We're away from our support system. We have to redo our friendships every time. Our families far away. And I know sometimes people will say oh, but the pay. But yes, but there's also a lot of extra, expenses when grandma's not there to help you babysit the kids, there's a lot of extra things that comes on top of it. And selling houses when the market isn't necessarily the great time to sell or buy. So there's a lot of challenges that it comes with. So those stressors. Also, a lot of what we see, but that's the same in just the general population, is, difficulties with family members, which you would see that. I think our chaplains in universities and everywhere else would probably see that too. Sometimes we also have people who are experiencing just difficulties from their past in the military. So that can happen. As we have members who have fought in different occasions or have been deployed, which is not always easy. So we're there to support that too. But I would say those are the main themes that we see. Oh, and financial difficulties also sometimes, especially recently. And members know, because it'll come up to us with all kinds of questions, because they know we kind of know where to find the answers. And if we don't know, we can find out without anyone knowing the question came from them. So it's really nice that way. That's pretty much what we do.
Awesome. Okay, I'm just going to keep going because we got lots of great questions.
Let's do it. Wow, this is great.
We'll be able to get to all of them, but I'm just going to go in order and we'll see what we can get to. So a question from Devin. So religious chaplains have a lot of resources and history to rely on, like prayers, traditions, and scripture. Do you find it difficult not to have those resources for your practice? And where do you look when you need inspiration and clarity?
Thanks, Devin. That's a tough question. I'm teasing him because I know Devin. But yeah, so that's actually a very good question, because you're right. Like, a lot of chaplains find inspiration in their own holy books or tradition. But humanism is also a tradition that has been around, I would say, as long as there's been humans, right? Whenever there were people that were starting to worship gods, there were also people who were wondering, why are we doing this? And thinking in the other direction. So there's also a lot of people that we can turn to kind of have historical background for humanism. But for me, I always just go back to the basic principle of humanism. And some will say it's too simple, but me, I find it's not too simple. It's just because it's the core. It's the core of everything. Human dignity, like that's it. Human rights, compassion, science, all of those are just very vital for me, and social responsibility. So I inspire myself from those principles to help guide people. But then again, this is what inspires me. And it's if people ask me from a humanist perspective, right? Because they might want to journey with their own perspective or another perspective. But that's usually what I use when members come and want to have like some inspiration. And yeah, and I find it interesting because I have great conversations sometimes with members who say, but if there's no life after death, why be good, right? And me, I'm like, exactly for that reason, because if we don't know if there's a life after death and this is all we got, let's make it beautiful. Let's take care of people. Let's try to build a world where everyone can find happiness. So to me, it makes it even more important to just take care of each other. And that's what really inspires me in my work.
That's awesome. That is really inspiring. Hey, Anonymous is asking, can you talk about how Humanist Chaplaincy is championing inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility in the CAF?
Oh, that's a really good one. Fait que la question, c'est qu'est-ce qu'on fait pour s'impliquer dans les causes, dans les Forces armées canadiennes. Là, c'est sûr qu'il y a juste moi en ce moment, fait que j'ai un petit impact, mais j'entraîne les aumôniers qui s'en viennent, puis ils sont tous déjà excellents, ils arrivent avec beaucoup de bagages. Mais ça va être vraiment important pour tous les aumôniers humanistes de toujours s'impliquer dans ces causes-là. Donc, les comités 2S LGBTQAI+, j'essaie de le dire en français, d'habitude je le dis en anglais. Toutes les causes pour lutter contre la discrimination des personnes de couleur. J'espère que nos aumôniers humanistes vont être vraiment impliqués là-dedans pour faire avancer les choses. So in English, what I was saying is, obviously right now there's just me. So I do my best to be involved, to support all of like the 2S LGBTQIA+ members and groups. I also try to support the Indigenous communities, the person of colors communities. But that's the thing is, the big thing that I'm trying to do is training the oncoming humanist chaplains as well, who already come with beautiful background and experience and openness, but even adding to that, because I want to make sure that all of the humanist chaplains, that it's very clear that we will be there to support all of those causes. And not just that, for example, medical aid in dying, as we know, is going to become changing soon to be more inclusive, if I understand properly, to include more people that can potentially apply. And that's a great example because not all chaplains would be comfortable journeying with a member or a family member of that member who would ask medical aid in dying, because in some traditions, that's seen as something that's forbidden. Whereas us as chaplains, we don't, humanist chaplains, on the contrary, we'll be right there with them, journeying with them. And, if they want us at their bedside as they pass away, we will be right there. So there are things like that we bring to the table as humanist chaplains, and we'll make sure that we're all fully trained in. Another example is if a member decides to go through an abortion, for example. Well, some traditions of chaplains will refuse to, be involved, whereas us as humanist chaplains, we can go and support. So that's something different also as humanist chaplains we bring. I don't want to say that other traditions might do it as well, right? That our chaplains are not humanists, So there are some that would, but there are so a big group that wouldn't. And that's what we bring to the table. We can add to the numbers of those chaplains who are comfortable to do those things. And also being, you know, affirming of the two LGBTQI plus community. Again, there are some chaplains of some traditions that do it already, but not all.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, we have another question here. We are fortunate that you are very naturally bilingual. Does a chaplain in CAF need to be bilingual to serve?
No. However, it really helps if you want to be promoted. But you will be given opportunities at some points in your career potentially to work on the other language that you don't have. But for sure, it's an asset when you're recruited if you're already bilingual. But yes, it's not a requirement. I think it's when you get to, I don't want to speak without knowing, but I know at some time in the promotion, you need to have reach a certain level of French to be able to continue. Alors, le bilinguisme, c'est pas essentiel pour un aumônier, mais pour monter dans sa carrière, c'est très utile. And that way also, it's nice to be able to serve all members, right? I mean, I would hope all of our chaplains would want to learn the other language just because it's just being able to communicate with others.
Awesome. Okay. Next up, this is an interesting question. How was your transition to Humanist chaplaincy taken by other CAF chaplains and by your friends and family?
I think that my colleagues that are CAF chaplains were surprised just because I didn't share anything before obviously deciding to do the switch. You know, it was kind of a bit of a risk I was taking in a way because had things not gone right with Humanist Canada, and thankfully Humanist Canada was amazingly supportive, but I had been known that I was leaving the Catholic Church before being accepted by Humanist Canada, and then Humanist Canada didn't accept me. I would have had to find another group to accept me. But after wanting to join Humanist Canada, it's clear that I'm non-theistic. So what group would have wanted to endorse me? I don't know, maybe Unitarian Universalist, but they're not here yet, right? So it was quite of a tricky transition. It was really stressful. But yeah, so I think my CAF calling, most of them were very, very surprised. But I had some great support from some of my previous friends who, just knowing me, could tell that this was a much better fit for me. And then for my family, well, my family has been really supportive, so I really appreciate it. They've been really supportive with my journey, although everyone has their, like, you know, my parents have their own view and everything, but I've really privileged that way to have been really accepted. My grandmother is also one of my biggest fans, always posting on all my posts, so that's nice. And I have a brother who's 18 who keeps sending me messages to encourage me too, so that's really neat. So oui, j'ai reçu beaucoup de support de ma famille. Je suis très reconnaissante. And then, of course, my husband, again, like I mentioned before, he's been just a great supporter.
Awesome. Okay. Question from Craig. How do religious soldiers treat humanist soldiers and vice versa? Does this cause any problems for the Canadian Armed Forces?
This is about religious soldiers, how they treat other soldiers?
Yeah, so it says how,
Okay.
how religious soldiers treat humanist soldiers and vice versa. So both ways.
Oh, okay. To be honest, for that, I would say it's like anywhere. I mean, in the Canadian Armed Forces, we're supposed to be respectful of everyone, right? And you would hope this is how it is in society too, although it's not always. I also know sometimes it's not a topic that's talked about, you know, it's like talking about politics. Like sometimes you just want to avoid certain topics. So I think some members like avoid the topic. But then again, like when I was on deployment, I deployed in Latvia in 2021. So you could see who would practice a religion or spirituality and who wouldn't. And I never heard or saw anyone really being judgy about that. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Maybe it happens, but in general, I haven't seen anyone being judgeful or anything like that. And if ever it did happen and someone was a victim of that, I'd hope they would report it, because that would be a lack of respect if ever they were mistreated by the other side.
Well, it's good to hear, though. It's fair treatment. There's a very lovely comment in the Q&A from Steve. I won't read it because it doesn't contain a question, but he says very nice things about you. You are the personification of a happy human, which I very much agree with.
Thanks, Steve. That's nice.
We have a question from Doug. Now that we have, and I believe this is pertaining specifically to the CAF, now that we have a humanist chaplain, can we update our MPRR form, no, MPRR from no religion to humanist, and would that help with representation in the CAF?
Okay, so for those who don't know what he's talking about they're called dog tags sometimes. It's what we wear. You see them in war movies that if we die, they split half and like they take the other half, and but yeah, we still have those. So here's something that wasn't very well known, but it's actually been available for quite a few years, humanism, to put on those. So I easily requested mine. And yeah, any CAF member can go and request theirs to have it's HUM. They will put humanist on it. Now, here's the thing. I've been wondering if we could access those stats to know how many are doing the request, but I don't know if that's information that's available. So, I mean, if you want to do it for a presentation, and if anyone wants to do it for a presentation, that's really amazing. One thing, though, that I've been told, and I don't know if this is true, but is that in certain deployments, it might be better also to keep the other one, just because in some countries, being a non-believer, let's say you're captured, can be more of an issue. So that's something that I need to explore and get guidance on about that. Because as we know, there's still a lot of discrimination around the world for people who are non-believers. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, and I think it's a good one to end with, and I apologize for the people who have asked questions that we won't be able to get to. And then we'll say goodbye, but Anonymous asks, if you could describe humanist military chaplaincy in 3 words, what would they be?
Human, dignity, care.
Also, maybe we can do one more question. So Martin says, you're a gifted chaplain. What do you see as the challenges for chaplaincy in general in the armed forces, and in particular for humanist chaplaincy?
So the challenge of the chaplaincy is that we need to be ever evolving to meet the needs of our members, right? And society evolves, and that has repercussion also in the armed forces, right? We're part of society. So it's that ever evolution to make sure that we keep fulfilling the needs of what that new generation coming in is looking for. And that's not easy. But a big switch that has been done recently to adapt is the introduction of humanist chaplaincy. That was very strategic. And I mean, it was done because for good reasons, but also because it's part of evolving with society. And I think that's the challenge, is that the chaplaincy needs to be forever evolving. And us, I believe, as humanists, one huge thing that we bring is that because our journey to join as a chaplain is a bit different, we can have younger chaplains. Because in general, the age of chaplains who join, it's after they've done ministry in churches or with their faith communities. So often they're a bit older, which is great. We need all ages, right? But also, I think it's important to have chaplains who represent also the younger generation. And one cool thing is, like, if we look, for example, the Netherlands, 1/3 of their humanist chaplains are women. So, and even if I look at our candidates, we have quite a few women who are joining. So I think what the humanist chaplaincy specifically is going to bring to help this evolve is hopefully we can bring more women in, hopefully more diversity, chaplains to represent a little bit of the younger population, so that we can keep evolving as a chaplaincy to continue to really care for our members. And, I know some will say, well, do we even need a chaplaincy, right? But to me, chaplaincy describes the work that we do, right? And the work that I described here, could it be done by a social worker? Yes, we're going to have social workers who are going to become chaplains, but the role is not the same as a social worker. Like, social workers on the base are usually sitting in the office, meeting members, and, it's separate from the unit. Whereas the role of a chaplain, and maybe one day we'll change name, maybe we'll become spiritual counselor, I don't know, right? But I really believe that needs to stay, because that's present in the day-to-day, because the military life it's amazing, but it has a lot of challenges too. And being there to support those members is so important.
Awesome. Thank you so much, MC. We are at time. I'll just ask if you have anything you'd like to say in closing.
Sure. I just want to really thank everyone who took time to listen and everyone who supported me in that journey. Merci pour tous ceux qui m'ont appuyé pendant le cheminement. It hasn't been easy, but all of you have made it worth it. Ça n'a pas été facile, mais vous tous, vous l'avez fait que ça a valu la peine. For those who still had questions, I'm going to ask Anna to share in the comments, or maybe she has already, but my Facebook page and my Twitter. So feel free to reach out to me directly if you want to ask the questions. I'll be happy to answer. And I also want to say a huge thank you to Anna, who's behind the scene doing a lot of the tech. You don't see her, but she's helping out. And also, obviously, Ian, I know you're a very busy person involved in so many projects and doing a difference in all kinds of contexts. So thank you to have taken the time to host me today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. I think everyone has really benefited from you sharing your journey today. And also thank you to everyone who attended today, and thank you all for your excellent questions as well. I'll just wrap up by saying, stay tuned for announcements about our next webinar on Humanist Chaplaincy in 2023. And you can visit our website and follow us on socials to get that information. You can also join us on Sunday, December 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for a conversation with Linda Cruz from Ottawa Co-Housing about co-housing communities. And finally, please take a moment to complete our post-webinar survey where you can suggest a speaker or a topic. We really appreciate your feedback. Again, thank you so much, MC, and thank you to everyone for being here. Take good care.